So, in the modules, we talked about how the Native Americans were not considered citizens, even though they lived and predated any of the other settlers that lived in the Americas. I find that this part of history is a massive slap in the face to the hundreds of thousands of people that suffer because of a lack of citizenship today, especially if they come from a neighboring country like Mexico, who less than 200 years ago owned and was a part of America. America, or the people that colonized it, spread their lifestyle, spread their democracy, spread their uh, viruses and everything that they brought with them, and destroyed the stability that we once had at what was previously Mexico, or what belonged to the native. In one of the modules in the video "Becoming American," we were shown the Naturalization Act of 1970. This one sort of impacted me because I saw that it had established the first uniform rules of granting U.S. citizenship through naturalization. It essentially limited citizenship to free white people, or free white persons, who met the following criteria, which was residing in the U.S. for at least 2 years, were quote unquote of good character, and swore allegiance to the Constitution. It, however, obviously excluded people that were non white. So anybody like the natives, any African Americans, any Asians that came into the country were excluded out of the Naturalization Act of 1790, essentially perpetuating this white supremacy and putting down everybody that wasn't white. Also, in the same video, I saw that the Congress enacted the Indian Citizenship Act in June 2nd of 1924, which finally granted citizenship to all Native Americans born in the U.S. And this gave them the right to vote. This was, however, governed by state law, and um, therefore meant that not all countries um, actually allowed natives to vote. Some barred Native Americans from voting until 1957. The reason I connect with this module so much is because I have a lot of family who are undocumented, and they moved, or they immigrated from Mexico to here. For example, my uncle, he um, hired a coyote, which is a person that takes you from Mexico to the U.S. And he and my mom came to the U.S. and my uncle ended up getting deported. He went all the way back to Mexico. He paid another coyote to bring him back up, and since then he has been living undocumented. My mom married a Mexican who fortunately had papers, so she got sorted out. But my uncle has remained undocumented for all these years and hasn't had the opportunity to get that citizenship. And he's been struggling to find a job that he actually likes, or one that um, is above a higher pay than what I would say would be minimum wage. He's been evicted multiple times because of this difficulty in finding work. And I have multiple family members that um, have difficulty in supporting their family and paying what they need to pay because of this lack of citizenship and their lack of ability to seek certain um, help from the government, just because of the lack of citizenship, and also the disproportionate amount of representation that they have because they aren't allowed to vote. I also have other family members that were deported. One of them, for example, not left, but had to leave their 15, 14-year-old daughter because she was unwillingly deported. Um, the next topic I want to talk about is sort of the white privilege and having it as it was one of the modules we talked about as well. Um, White privilege, unpacking the knapsack. Um, Sometimes I can sort of relate to this ability to access the knapsack of white privilege. I pass off as white very occasionally. I remember this one story where I came into the office and one of my coworkers, this was very recent as well. One of my coworkers thought I was white. It was probably my first day. She asked me, "Hey, what ethnicity are you? Because um, you look white." Or she told me like basically at the end of the day, like, "Oh, I had assumed you're white. I didn't know you could speak Spanish." And I have been told by multiple people that I'm racially ambiguous, and a lot of my cousins also look the same as me. So I feel like a lot of that white privilege may pertain to me a little bit, but I don't. It's hard to notice because I want to be integrated into my own culture, and it's difficult for someone like me and my cousins, who my cousins live in Mexico, are likely discriminated even by our own culture because of that ability to access white privilege. Um, it sounds very niche, particularly because there isn't too many um, situations in where being mestizo, which would be like mixed with Native American or Mexican with white, would be an issue. But sometimes it can when you're trying to indulge in a lot of those um, similar cultural events that you have with your family. My cousins as well deal with racism in Mexico. They are very white compared to compared to the rest of their family. So my cousins who are more white and obviously Mexican get sort of picked on or occasionally robbed more in the streets because they have this whiter complexion, and they have nothing. They didn't choose to be born like that. They were um, in their past they had been colonized, or the again the Spanish or whichever one of the many countries that invaded mixed themselves with our people and made us all look a little bit different. But most of the population in, I would say, southern Mexico looks shorter, a little bit on the darker side, but my cousins do not. So they do feel their own sort of racism in those areas. It is sort of a different issue than the one that we face here, but it was something that